In this video, I'm going to go over the argument or the question, is vinyl DJing dead? And it's understandable why this gets asked, because it's had a bit of a rough time of it the last few years. So vinyl DJing was the only way to DJ for nearly 50 years. It was obviously there at the start of DJing, it's how DJing got invented. But then when the CDJs from Pioneer came out, then things really began to change. And the first CD deck that came out was the CDJ 500, and that allowed DJs for the first time to use CDs to DJ. But it wasn't as tactile as vinyl decks, so it didn't have the platters that DJs were used to. So it didn't catch on. It was the start, but it didn't catch on completely. But then Pioneer came out with the CDJ 1000s, and they were the first to have a platter that mimicked a vinyl deck. And this was basically the beginning of the end for vinyl DJing-ish. So what happened is, very quickly, because CDs were then the dominant way of listening to music, DJs were suddenly able to carry hundreds of tracks with them, as opposed to 30 or 60 vinyl that they could take to a gig. So it became a lot easier for DJs to tour. Clubs and festivals very quickly switched over to having CD decks and vinyl decks, both of them at the same time. But then over time, obviously more and more DJs were only using CDs. So the vinyl decks, although they were often still in clubs, they fell into disrepair. So this is kind of what signed vinyl's fate, really, because the DJs that were showing up with vinyl had a much tougher time. So I've even experienced this myself. I went into a club and put the vinyl on the record, put the needle on, and the needle just skipped right across the record because the decks hadn't been maintained. So all the balance was off, and it rendered the vinyl decks useless. Luckily, I had my laptop and a controller, so I was able to then do the entire show running software, playing off software. But it really signaled to me that vinyl was not really being actively supported in the smaller clubs. Obviously, with big name DJs, if they want to play a vinyl set, then a big club or a big festival will have either brand new decks or well serviced decks for vinyl. So it does still happen, and you have a lot of DJs that are purists and love to play on vinyl because it is a lot more tactile. Like when you rock a record back and forwards, you can actually feel the music in your fingers as the grooves go past the needle. So there's a lot to love about vinyl DJing, and this is why it is not dead and why it continues to survive. So obviously it's not the dominant force anymore, because even CDs, as those die away, you now have USB sticks. So instead of hundreds of tracks, DJs can now have thousands upon thousands on USB sticks that they just plug straight in to the media players, as they are essentially. And it just gives them plenty more options. But vinyl still continues to exist. One, because the purists and because of how fun it is to DJ with real vinyl. And then there is also a niche of turntablism. So these are scratch DJs, and they use pure vinyl. Even if they have it linked to a laptop, they will still use a vinyl emulation system. So they're still manipulating on vinyl turntables. So that keeps vinyl DJing going. Another way to track this is production of DJ turntables. So the biggest and most successful manufacturer by far were Technics, and they actually took their decks out of production in around 2010. And this sent shockwaves through the industry. There was a lot of call and a big movement or a big push for them to be put back into production, but the sales just weren't there, which is what resulted ultimately in them making the decision to take Technics out of production. But there was enough of a push and enough of a consistent push that they were reintroduced in 2016. So you can again buy brand new Technics vinyl decks. And there are of course other manufacturers, so these ones are made by Denon. So there are still manufacturers that are out there producing, and of course that only happens if there's a market. So in that respect, DJing with vinyl is definitely not dead, because otherwise you would have zero manufacturers of vinyl decks. Now also the other thing that's happened in recent times is, after a long slow decline in vinyl sales, they've actually started picking back up again. So this shows a renewed interest in vinyls as a media to DJ with. So it's nowhere near the dominant force that it used to be, of course. It's just sadly not as practical to DJ with vinyl, but I think it will always be there. There'll always be a subset of DJs that just love to use vinyl. So I think it's a long way off dying. DJing with vinyl is definitely not dead. So this was just a quick overview. I do go over everything in more detail with some extra examples on the website. So if you go to bestdjsetup.com/vinyl, then you can read the full article there. And thanks for watching. If you have any comments, drop them below and I'll respond to every single one.